Hey guys, Rob here from Room 301. Today I'm joined by Mark Saxby, an old friend of mine. Mark is the founder of Status Social. Expect to learn why your partner might be your greatest tool in business, and also why Mark hates automated LinkedIn connection requests. Let's get into it. Mark, thank you for joining me. How are you?
I'm brilliant. How are you?
Yeah, very well, thank you. Very well indeed. Well, look, Mark, introduce yourself.
So I'm Mark Saxby. I'm a founder of Status Social, which is one of the world's first specialist social media agencies. I am the founder of a charity called Positive Social, which changes lives in schools, helping people make better decisions about how they use social media. I am a dad of three. I run a campaign group against Quiche, and I helped Azerbaijan win the Eurovision Song Contest while disguised as a Moldovan.
Now you're gonna have to rewind to the quiche bit. Tell me more about the quiche bit.
Well, quiche. So I'm a Christian, and one of the things that, particularly in the early days, used to happen a lot is when they had a bring and share type meal at church. What you'd have pressurized families all trying to get to church on time. I mean, you'll know what it's like now, Rob. Trying to get a little ones out of bed and into the night into clothes, and then drive them somewhere for 10 o'clock on a Sunday morning is quite tricky. And then they'd on the way they'd go, oh no, we've brought nothing for the bring and share meal. And they'd dive into the nearest corner shop and pick up the nearest cheapest thing, which nearly always was a slimy, horrible, cheap-looking quiche, and they'd bring it to the bring and share. And there was one particular episode where the only thing on the buffet table were quiche. That was all there was. And
Um,
I can't stand quiche. So I
no,
thought
no.
from now on, I need to create a campaign that will ban it from all the world. So I have an online petition. It's called the Archbishop of Canterbury. I mean, he's not around at the moment, but and the Pope to ban quiche from all Christendom. When I launched it, it went mad. I was featured on the BBC. I got the Sunday Times ringing me for a quote. It was. I mean, I had the world at my fingertips. Even Alan Jones was a big fan.
Yeah.
I was walking on the air.
Well, look, I've never been a big fan of quiche, so I will back that every day of the week. Yeah, some introduction, Mark. Lots of things, and lots of pies. And for anyone that doesn't know, hopefully at this point, I think we're about 30 to 35 episodes in at this point, but we have three key questions on this podcast. What is in your toolbox? What's a failure? Bonus points for being funny. And then finally, what's going in room 301? So something that really, really grinds your gears, something you want to see again. So, Mark, what is in your toolbox? You're a man of many different businesses and very busy, I'm sure. So, what helps you manage your workloads? How do you stay so organised?
So the answer is Kerry Saxby. My wife.
Life,
People
yeah.
say to me, "How on earth can you work in a?" Well, in fact, people say to my wife more than they say to me. Let's be honest. They say to my wife, "How on earth can you work in a business with your husband?" I could never manage it. And me and Kerry have worked together now for nearly all of the 13 and a half years, and we just love it. And what just like we're great in marriage, we're also great in terms of business because I'm like the visionary. I have all these ideas and I want to rush off and do all these things. And Kerry's the integrator. So, which you'll see in Traction if you've ever read the book Traction. So I'll have an idea and Kerry will say, yeah, I'm not so sure about that one, Mark, or yeah, that's a good idea. So where it works on that kind of day-to-day basis is that I'm all over the place. I've got a million and one ideas. I'm distracted all the time. If Kerry's not in the office, you might as well just say, kill the day. I might as well go and have a lie down on the sofa. I just hardly get anything done. But when Kerry's here, what we do is, for instance, at the start of the day, we write down all the things I need to do, and we do it in times. So we'll say, right, from 12 to 12:30, ring Rob. From 12:30 to 1 o'clock, write a blog. From 1 o'clock, take lunch. So we have a whole thing written out in terms of, and then because then I have that as a schedule, it really helps me. And just again, simply on a whiteboard, I don't use any other tools because I find visually, I'm just better visually. I just go through that list. Sometimes I get behind, but then when I get behind, I'm just determined to catch up again. Because what I want to do, at the end of the day, I want to say to Kerry, are you proud of me, Kerry? I've got all my work done. I don't know why I say, are you proud of me, Kerry? I'm 53, it's ridiculous. So really, that is the thing, that she is the person that is, without her, the business. In fact, the business wasn't really that I suppose serious, process driven. I had me and my original business partner Martin had a great time, but we're definitely less focused. And only when Kerry came on board did we start getting that focus. And you just realise in every business you need somebody like that.
Absolutely, absolutely. And do you think it helps that you live together, work together? Do you think that's a help at all, or do you think someone outside of that relationship would also do a good enough job? Or
I mean, I think if there was somebody else who was like Kerry, then they could just do an equal job. But it's obviously quite hard to find somebody who because
don't you like your wife?
my wife, she's unique, so it's quite tricky. But I mean, the downside, of course, is that we finish work and then the temptation is then to carry on
Yeah.
talking about work. So like every Thursday we have a date night. So we go out for because my youngest daughter who's 10. 10, yeah, definitely 10. She goes to guide, so we have a date night, and of course the temptation is then to catch up on the things we've not talked about. So we sometimes will have a little bit of that, and then we just say stop. So we do have to be quite brutal, and Carrie's a lot better at me in saying, Mark, I'm not talking about this at 10 at night. Those sort of things.
It's good.
So
It's good.
it does
It's
work
good to be
well.
brutal. It's good to be brutal about it. And this is the third podcast in a row now, third recording in a row where good old pen and paper or whiteboard and marker in your case has outdone any pieces of software to keep things organized. You can't beat the traditional way of organizing your life, can you, at the end of the day? Um, Anything else in your toolbox, Mark? Anything else that
Well,
keeps you organized?
there's a few little things that I find really useful. So when it comes to social media, we really like Buffer. It's a nice, free, easy tool to use. Use it for LinkedIn and Twitter. Don't use it for anything else, or rather X, I should say. But that's been really useful. I use Fathom. Fathom's a great tool. I know I've heard you talk
Yes.
about Otter before, but Fathom's much better. So Fathom again records is just really. So what I do is when I have meetings with clients and we're talking about their social media and kind of what content and what things are coming up, it's just really useful as to record it, and then it kind of gives you an AI summary, and then you can go back and look at your notes. And my handwriting was always awful in the old days,
Me
or
and you
you
both.
might have something technical, and you can go back and listen to it again and again until you get it. So I found Fathom really good. I've just been really also starting to use ChatGPT a lot more. I just find that it's just better than Google in terms of finding out the little nuances. So the other day, in fact, I actually have a post going out on LinkedIn at the moment, and I wanted to. It's a campaign I'm doing with another sales trainer, and what we're doing is we're doing a kind of a LinkedIn masterclass. So I'm doing my stuff, which is all about how to win people over. And then Simon, he's a sales navigator expert. So I wanted to find some examples of people like Marks and Spencer, people who are in retail who joined together as names. Anyway, whatever I typed into Google, couldn't get anything. But when I use ChatGPT, and then I could kind of have a conversation, it came up with some great examples of things
Yeah.
I didn't even know were partnerships, like CNA. Who knew CNA actually were people? I used, it was really useful.
Excellent. Yeah, and interestingly, a lot of our obviously what we do for a business, we increase website acquisition, traffic, etc. And we're starting to see a lot of the acquisition channels come from ChatGPT now. I say a lot, a small percentage still compared to Google and all the other usual channels, but a growing percentage more importantly. So yeah, it's interesting. And as you say, it's in my opinion, it's still not a great search engine for a lot of terms, but when you want those nuances, when you've got something very specific and Google just doesn't quite understand what you want, being able to have that back and forth really helps you open up and get exactly what you need. So yeah, I agree. And it's gonna be an interesting year next year to see how it develops as a search engine, particularly for what we do
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah, well, I think one of the things, because I'm also a professional speaker, and I think there's a real opportunity to talk about social media and AI, because I think there's not many people talking about it, and a lot of people are misusing AI and social media, and I think and as somebody who's been speaking about social media for a long time, I think there's, a lot more. I think AI can be very useful for social media, but also,
Yeah.
well, you can see the awful AI written posts on social media that are
Oh,
just
yeah.
flooding it, that are just awful. And you can read them, you can tell straight away, can't you? Awful.
I can tell. I can tell by just by the emojis that are used. That's how obvious it is to me. Any good use cases for social media in regards to AI?
I mean, I find it's been really useful I would say, in terms of being able to work out who your target audience is. I think, AI is really good for being able to hone that. I think it's good for content ideas. So, like saying, okay, right, I'm a vet. What things can I write about on social media, and it'll give you some ideas. I think again, you've got to dig a bit deeper, and you've got to obviously develop the ideas. So don't go for the obvious ones. I think it can be a starting point for writing, messages, but generally I don't tend to use it for that because I just think I can do better than AI can at the moment, which is a good place to be. Somebody actually said to me, "Are you not worried, Mark, that AI is going to, steal your business?" And I said, "No, because I honestly don't think AI will ever be as good as me." And that's not because I'm proud and arrogant. It's just because actually it won't have the history, the stories, the
Yeah,
nuances, the
100%.
experience. So therefore, then there's nothing to worry about really.
And I think that's how to leverage things going forward. It's to leverage your perspective, your unique experience, and that's how you're going to get ahead going forward. So get yourself a Kerry is what I've learned off the back of that, Mark. Moving on. So a failure, big believer that the more you fail, the more you learn, which is why this question plays such a big part in our podcast. So, Mark, tell us about a time you've failed, and again, bonus points if it is funny.
So I created the world's most amazing, impressive service. It was going to blow. It was going to blow the whole world apart. It was going to be talked about across the world. I was going to probably become a millionaire. Everyone around me was going to become millionaires. And that project was called Social Media Weddings. So it was the first professionally
You know what?
run.
I remember this.
Oh, well,
And
not
me and
surprising.
Mark go back quite a number of years, and I remember this vividly.
Yeah, and it wasn't even that long ago either, as well. That's the sad thing about it. Yes, it was the world's first professionally run social media wedding service. So ultimately, we would. So what we do, we would record. We would set the whole wedding up on social media in terms of getting not obviously everything, but getting together the guests and having wedding present ideas, all sorts of stuff like that. Then we would have a photographer following the bride and groom, putting photos onto social media straight away. We had a giant social media wall at the wedding, and then we'd follow up the day after the wedding. The photos from the wedding would all appear on a photo group, on a Facebook group, so that they could see it immediately rather than having to wait weeks to see their photos. So as you can imagine, it was just the most amazing dynamite idea. And do you know how many weddings we sold, Rob?
I tell you what, before I answer that question, I remember looking at this, and I remember you must have invested some money into it because I remember you had a really nice, sharp-looking website. You really went for it, and I remember thinking, this is genius. Why didn't I think of this? And I know you did at least one.
We did at least one. You're right, we did one. In fact, we did two. One properly and one half of one. And both of them, neither of them paid a penny. The first one was obviously a pilot that we obviously did as a big publicity stunt, which was enormous. I mean, we were featured again in national press,
Yeah, I remember that too. Yeah.
Ion magazine. It was massive. BBC, big story, and it was great. The second one was just for some friends who were getting married and they wanted to live stream it to their friends and relatives in Canada. So it's quite a straightforward one. But that was it. And of course, the trouble is that we're a social media agency who works for businesses. We're not experienced in the wedding industry, dealing with couples, and also we didn't want to work on a weekend. So it was a terrible idea on so many levels.
Big
So
flaw
I
there.
don't. So really, what was my biggest embarrassment was the fact that, and this is the biggest learning thing. I think this is so useful for any business. Is bright, shiny things are not the right things often to follow. We had a very successful business. We didn't need to waste thousands of pounds. We didn't need to waste thousands of man hours. We didn't. I mean, it was just a complete waste of our energy. And although it didn't maybe stop us from growing, certainly what it did do, it stopped us from growing. It stopped us from doing what we wanted to do. And in the end, we sold the brand for I think it was it 1.3 million? No, it was £250. So yeah, so that was I would say the biggest mistake that we've made in terms of in recent years, where I just think, gosh, Mark, and it's been a lesson because every now and again I get these amazing ideas and I think, is this really right? But now what I do, one is that I think Kerry is more brutal because she's learned from social media weddings. She thought it was a bad idea, but she also liked the whole concept. And to be honest, it was that the day we did the social media wedding was probably one of the best days of my entire social career. It was such a wonderful day. But now she's a bit more brutal in terms of Mark, you sure? But also as well, I would say I'm much more questioning of myself. So I've got a new product at the moment called Be More Colin, which goes into workplaces and we help. So the average worker in the UK spends around 2 hours a day on their personal mobiles doing personal things during the working life. And when you think about it, Rob, that means then that if they're task switching, and it takes about 15 minutes to kind of get you back to full effectiveness, it means that most people in the UK are never fully effective in their entire working day. So we go into offices, and we go into conferences, and we help teams to break that addiction to their social media, make some better decisions, lifestyle choices, which ultimately means then they spend more time doing their work, they get away on time, they have better mental health, they're more likely to enjoy their job more, they get to know their colleagues more, so for the businesses then there's better staff retention. So on face value it sounds like an amazing idea and so needed, but what of course the big question was, does actually anybody want to buy it? And this is what we've done a lot slower here, is we've tested the market, we've gone to some people, we've got some opinions, we've had a couple of bookings so far, which has been great, and we've got some more coming up as well. But we've done it a lot slower to get to where we are now, so that actually if it didn't go well, we could pull back without having done any expense. Because all I've done is I've written a page on the website, and that's it. So it's been a lot more careful walking forward, which I think is really important for business owners to do.
No, 100%. I always, if I've got any ideas, I always think of how can I test this rather than how can I do this first. It's obviously people use waiting lists and all sorts of different bits and pieces, don't they? But before we invest any capital or man hours, you have to go for a test first. But yeah, it's funny because I do remember social media weddings quite well, and it was very slick. The brand was very slick. It made a lot of noise, and I really thought you were onto something. Then it kind of went quiet. Do you think there's a business model there, just not for you? Or
Yeah. I know. I do think. I think actually, in the right hands with the right person, I actually think it was a complete goer. I just think you needed to have invested the right amount of time and probably. I mean, we tried to sell it to an existing weddings brand. That would have been ideal because then they could have just tacked it on. They'd have had the connections and they could have run with it. It didn't happen that way. We ended up selling it to somebody who lives in Tenerife, bizarrely. There we go. But I think absolutely. I think part of the problem was it was probably a little bit too early. It's interesting, isn't it, about when is the right time for these sort of things. So interesting with the charity side, Positive Social, we actually did the first pilots for that nearly 9 years ago. And we had a few schools, we went in there, loved it, but we found you'd ring up a school and you'd tell them about it and they say, oh, we've got no problems with social media, because they weren't aware of what was really going on. So we did it. We did a pilot. We went into one school every year for the next 6 years, but we never really had the time to really push it out. And then a couple of years ago, we launched it properly. Of course, the timing is perfect now because every school knows that their time is taken up handling social media issues. So we then, we just get inundated with schools wanting to get us in to run these free sessions for year sevens, and that's great. But the timing is right now. So I'm glad that we kind of did lay some of that groundwork and we kind of evolved it in our heads with that one school in terms of how to make it work. And now it's great. Now we've got deliverers across the UK doing it. We've got businesses funding us to go into schools. It's really exciting, but the timing is got to be spot on.
Yeah, excellent. And Positive Social really growing arms and legs at the minute, isn't it? I think, which is great because I think it's such an important message that you're putting out there as well. So yeah, hats off for that. And finally, the main event. So for anyone that doesn't know, the reason why we call this podcast Room 301 is in the SEO world, which is a particularly part of digital marketing that we specialise in. And a 301 redirect is the art of telling Google that this page no longer exists and it goes over there, never to be seen again. So we've created a room called Room 301 where we put things in marketing that nobody wants to see again, that grinds people's gears. Mark, what are you putting in there? I'm
putting in automated LinkedIn connection requests. Something like this. Hi, Rob. I see you're in the funeral business. We've got some lovely hearses and we think you'd be the perfect person to drive them. Would you like to set up a meeting next Tuesday? Love, Bob. He's in the Philippines, by the way.
Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah,
or
absolutely. Yeah.
America, or somewhere else where you never get no connection at all. So those sort of messages, any kind of automation, it's just so frustrating. We've taken over accounts for a few clients who have used automation, and when you go through those automated messages, they've been ignored because they're clearly automated. And whenever if we send a message that's been tailored and actually is kind of got value for that person, they don't ever answer because of that initial mess up of that first automated message. So they've killed all potential chances of relationship because they got off on the wrong foot. It's like, we talk about it when I do my keynote talk about social media, as I say, it's like diving in for the kiss when you've not got to know a name first. And I think that happens a lot, unfortunately, with automation and on LinkedIn.
Yeah. And what would be your advice then to prospect on LinkedIn and generate opportunity off LinkedIn?
Well, I always say the most important word in the phrase social media is being social.
Yeah.
And therefore, then being social means you get to know somebody, you get them to like you and trust you. They get to know who you are. You work out what's the value to them. You talk about what's interesting to them, not about yourself. And if you do that, then actually, then you start opening doors into people who would, like to talk to you. But rushing in is just it's just a terrible mistake. It's just good to take your time. Now, there is a line though. I remember at school there was a girl I liked for ages, and then probably about a year, and I tried to become friends with her, and I tried to make her laugh, and I thought, over time she'll like me, and then finally asked her out, and she was like, "But Mark, you're just a friend." Trouble is, I stayed in the friend zone far too long, and by then she'd already taken interest in somebody else. So yes, don't dive in for the kiss, but also don't stay in the friend zone too long as well.
No, no. And to build that trust, is that content strategy? Is that putting out regular posts on interesting stuff, not using AI?
Well, I suppose you think about it from a point of view of if you're going to yeah, let's say we want somebody to fix your roof, and you thought, okay, right, what's my criteria for choosing somebody? Now you could just go into Yell.com and pick somebody from there, but realistically, you're taking a bit of a chance. To build trust, you might look at their Trustpilot reviews. You might look at their Facebook page. You might put out a message on your Facebook to say, or on your social media to say, anybody worked with Andy the roofer? Is he any good? You might, if Andy the roofer came round, you might then call. You say to them, can I talk to some of your customers? Can I go around and see some of your roofs? And all these sort of things then lay this trail of trust. So it's just doing the same thing with social media. What's that? What are those breadcrumbs of trust that around the social around the web, really? I mean, if I look at my LinkedIn profile, for instance, I've got 242 recommendations on my LinkedIn profile. I've got 46 on Google, another 45 on Facebook. I've lost track of how many of those. That's nearly 400 recommendations that are found on the web. That's good trust signals. But
Yeah.
so often I talk to organisations and they've hardly got any recommendations. They don't understand the power of Google. They don't realise that people do look for reviews, but they've never really asked people. So therefore, then they've not got them.
No, I totally agree. I totally agree. And do you think automation plays any part at all in a sort of social selling strategy? Do you think there's a way to scale or do it at scale
Yeah.
without it?
I mean, we interestingly, we used automation before automation existed. That sounds odd, doesn't it? We did a campaign for it was the Visit Derby. So it was the tourism part of Derby City Council, and they had the camera Real L. Me and Rob, we
Oh,
like our
perfect for you then, Mark.
it was perfect for me. The Real Ale Festival, the national one, was coming to Derby to the Roundhouse, and we were asked to try and fill hotel rooms. So we created, using Hootsuite Excel spreadsheet, we ultimately copied and pasted thousands of messages to individual beer drinkers in the UK, inviting them to come to Derby and stay in a hotel room. So, and then we used that level of automation. Each one had their own. Each one had like we knew they liked it. We knew they liked Real Ale, and then we send it all off to these people, and we filled the hotel rooms in Derby. But the thing was there is that we knew they were Real Ale drinkers because we looked at their social signals. So we knew that when we sent a message to Rob saying, "Rob, hey, have you heard about our festival? Come and stay in our rooms. They're only £20 a night." Rob's going to say yes because actually you love Real Ale. And as somebody said, this is the best form of marketing I've seen on Twitter. I've no, this is such an unusual approach, but I've no reason not to come. Things like that, because our marketing was so spot on. So I do think automation can work well, but only if you're providing something that's true value to the recipient, and you know that's what they really want.
Nice. Excellent. Anything else you want to put in room 301?
Oh gosh, what else could I put in 301? It's marketing. I mean, there's so many things that are just terrible, isn't it? Oh, I'll tell you what I could put in there. Jargon from SEO experts.
No,
Oh,
don't. Yeah, I
oh,
feel like
I had one SEO expert. In fact, you know this story, Rob, because I told you about it years ago. Was we had somebody who did a talk and about SEO, and I said to him, "Oh, your language is. I don't understand half the things you're saying, and I work in digital." And he said, "Oh, I use it on purpose, a difficult language, because I think people will think, oh, I don't understand him, so therefore I need to spend money with him to understand what he's going on about. So I try and purposely keep it mysterious." And I just thought that is so wrong, so
no,
wrong.
that is wrong. Yeah, SEO. It's a tough one to understand, but for me, educate. In fact, the more they understand it, the more likely they are to value a supplier to do it, if anything. So,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Well, I didn't really understand what room 301. I didn't really understand what 301 till you said it today, and now I feel like that
there you
bit of
go.
jargon's been busted.
There you
Amazing.
go. Jargon busted. Well, look, Mark, thank you for joining me. Really good to catch up. We had a quick chat before this podcast, didn't we? Which was great. Tell everyone where they can find out more. I know there's various different bits and pieces you've got going on. So, yeah, tell everyone where we can find out more.
So our website is statussocial.co.uk. Our charity site, positivesocial.org.uk. Just reach out through there. I'm also, as I said, on LinkedIn. I'm on X as well. So they're probably my two most active networks. So just look for Mark Saxby and then Mr. Mark Saxby on X.
Brilliant. Thank you, Mark, and thank you, everybody, for listening. We will catch you again next year at this point. Thank you very much.
Merry Christmas. Happy New
Merry
Year.
Christmas.